Hello everybody, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today is going to be a relatively quick and easy video. This is my X Maxx, the version 3 X Maxx. So far it's been a great truck, very reliable. The only thing that I've had happen to it at the current moment is the gears. I've shredded the stock gears, which are made out of monkey metal, Jeep metal, that didn't hold up very well. They broke, and now this next set of gears, which I have put into it, but these Proline trencher tires are very heavy and puts a strain on the drive line, but I accidentally blew out one of the stock tires, so until I get a replacement for that, the Proline trenchers are on there for now. But let's replace the gears. And the other thing that has happened to it, while it isn't technically broken, is that this screw that holds the two halves of the shock tower together right there have come apart. So there's a split right there, but we should just be able to take the pin out and put a new screw in, and it should be all good to go. To make sure that it was the gears, I've already taken the screws out of this gear cover, but there's two screws, one right there and one right there, to reveal the gears in here. And you can see it, but there is gear shavings all in here, and this spur gear is just trashed. I do believe that the gear mesh was too far apart, and then it started skipping, and then it just started shredding it and got really hot and made the Loctite on the pinion come loose, and then it stopped driving. So we're gonna replace both the spur gear as well as the pinion, just because we're in here and I have the spares of both. And unfortunately today the drill that I normally use is out of juice and is currently charging behind me, but it's gonna be hand tools today. Pieces we are going to be using are this 54 tooth hardened steel spur gear, same thing as what's in there now. And then, because I just wanted to make it easier, I have bought an Arma Mod 1 a D pinion gear, so rather than it being a straight hole, which I'll open it up and show you guys. Rather than it being a round hole, it's actually a D shape, so that stays on the motor shaft. The only way that it's going to spin on there is if the pinion comes loose and then it falls off. So you don't have to set the pinion super tight for it to stay on there and spin around. It's more for making sure that it doesn't slide off. Taking the set screw out of the set screw hole. D shape. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the motor out, and in order to do that we are going to have to flip the X Maxx over. Alright, got the X Maxx flipped over, and the four screws that we are going to take out are these four in this oval slot, and that is what holds the motor down into the pin system. So let's get those screws out. Alright, now that I got the motor screws out, it's time to flip it over. Alright, now that we got the motor flipped over, pull it out. And the pinion is actually okay, but we're going to replace it anyway. This screw, you want it to be pretty darn tight, so that way the pinion doesn't fall off even with heat, but this one still came off. You gotta be very careful to not strip the screw out. Take it off. Visually, it looks fine. The teeth there are a bit worn, but this would be still a very good pinion to use. I'll put it in the box and we'll keep it. Now, if you look at the motor shaft, you can see that there's some red stuff on there that is Loctite that I put on the whole set screw to make sure that it didn't come off, which it held it on there really well, but when the gears got really hot from being incorrectly meshed together, they still came off. But I'm just gonna leave it on there. And I'd also like to point out that this D pinion was longer than the D section on the motor shaft. It was too shallow for this, so if you want to fit the Arma D-shaped pinion gear, you are going to have to grind another 1/4 of an inch back on your motor shaft in order for this to fit, because otherwise it just doesn't go on all the way and then your mesh won't set all the way. So you have to grind out another like 1/4 of an inch to go from here to like here. Alright, I'm gonna put red unremovable Loctite on this pinion. Now, red is supposedly unremovable Loctite, as well as blue Loctite, but it is removable with heat, and these gears have a very high chance of getting hot, so that is what I'm putting on, is the blue Loctite. Alright, I put the pinion gear on, and I set the set screw in a little bit just to hold it on there. It's time to take the spur gear out. We're not going to tighten that all the way down yet until we have the mesh set to the right depth to make sure we get full tooth connection. But we're going to take the spur gear off and show you the difference in between the two. One of the screws seems to be not cooperating. Get it out of the way. Gear cover comes off. The 2 long screws go on the left side and the 2 short screws go on the right side. Covered in a lot of grease. Filled up the transmission full of grease, and it's coming out a little bit. But here is the shaft. Now, it might not fall off here, but this bearing has the tendency to fall off like that, as well as this gear right here. And you got to make sure you don't lose that pin, because it goes into the back of that gear. So make sure you don't lose these guys. Set them somewhere where you remember. They're gonna have grease on them, so you're gonna get a little dirty, but here is what's left of the spur gear, and I don't know if you can see it, but the teeth are pointed in a direction, and that's not how they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be round at the top, but these are pointy, so these have had a lot of wear on them. It is pretty pokey. Alright, I'm gonna take the spur gear off and show you the difference. Alright, I have the gears aligned and the teeth set, so if we can get the camera to focus here. Come on. There we go. That is the difference in between the teeth. The one in the front has worn down at an angle, and there is no end of the tooth left. The engagement is very small. That way it looks goofy, and that way it looks practically flat up here. This direction is very rough and this direction is very smooth, whereas this is universal. Like, as far as the teeth being uniform, this one they're all angled because that was twisting it away. And I'm going to use just a simple rag to wipe out as much of the shredded teeth as possible inside the hole. There's a little gear cover right here that has a single screw take out as well. You don't have to take this out, but it makes it easier. Single screw, and then this thing comes off, which has a whole bunch of gunk on it. And then in the hole is pretty much the same stuff. Just a whole bunch of shavings from teeth. Now, if you really wanted to, you could take it apart and get in there and clean it, but I just rebuilt this X Maxx, and I don't want to have to fully take this apart because in there's also access to the main center axle, which has shavings on it. It's not going to get into any of the bearings or anything, but right there is the center axle, and it has a hollow space in here where I'm sure there's shavings, but there's a bearing that sits right there with a shield on it, so it's not going to get in there, and it's not going to get in over here on the front. But I don't have time to take this all apart and clean that, so I'm just going to wipe the majority of it away, and it'll be fine. But we're going to screw the new spur gear on, get it back in there, put the cover back on, and put the motor back in. Alright everybody, sorry for the shaky camera mount. I'm working on getting that fixed. But if you look in here, this is Traxxas's pin system. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's a pin right here and right here. But it basically goes into the mounts on the motor, and it sets the pinion mesh. This is a 54 tooth spur and a 15 tooth pinion, but because it was so loose that it wasn't making a full tooth engagement, so I've gone ahead and put the pins into the 14 tooth spot, which puts the motor closer than the 15 spot because it's a smaller pinion, so it's going to get a lot better tooth engagement on the pinion and the spur. I don't see why that would cause a problem because the 14 tooth isn't that much smaller than the 15. It's not like I'm jumping multiple sizes, and I've tried this before on the slashes, and so far it has not caused a problem yet. Setting the mesh tighter than what the recommended factory setting should be for the like predetermined sizes, at least for the slash. This, it's built in with it, whereas the slash, it's kind of optional, but we're gonna run it, and I'm gonna see how it happens. There are little holes here on the bottom of the motor that will fit in, but you put it in, and what you want to do to get the motor to line up is get it in, obviously, and there's this little tab that goes on the motor mount that rides in this channel that's right here. So you get it in, and you gotta get that to be in the front, like that. Get a little bit more light in here, like that. That way it sits in that channel. You don't want it behind, and you don't want it, you want it in there nice and solid. And this, when I put the screws in the back, it will have the motor be all tightened up and good to go. Alright guys, I have the motor screws put in and motor all aligned, and it might be kind of hard to hear, but there's a little bit of motor slop, or not slop, but play in between the gears. That's what you want. If it's too tight and the gears are rubbing together too much, it's going to create too much friction. They'll get really, really hot. And the pinion lines up with the spur gear really well, so I'm gonna tighten that up, and then all we got to do is just put the gear cover back on, and we're all done. Alright, I double verified that the pinion gear is on all the way, mesh is set good. You want to triple check to make sure that that set screw in the pinion is tight and it has Loctite on it, a healthy amount of Loctite. You don't want too much Loctite, because otherwise, if you want to ever take that off or it strips out, you want to be able to get it out, but enough Loctite to where it'll hold that in and hopefully not fall off, especially when you're out in the woods and your tool bag is either at home or in the vehicle and you're way in the woods. It's a long walk back. But now that that's all good, mesh sounds good, time to fix that screw and get it out. The screws are on the opposite side. I'm gonna flip it around. And zoom you in for it. Alright, so the first thing you do is you take the set screw out that is holding the pin in, and then you go from the back, push it out as far as you can, and then take the weight off the spring, slide your pin out, slide your shock out, make sure you get the spacers as well, otherwise they'll drop off into nowhere and you may never find them. And then in this chasm there is a M4 screw that takes a 2.5mm driver. MIP is the brand that I use. They're the best. I have other sets from Amazon and whatnot, but the tips wear out within a couple months and don't last. When you take off a shock, it wants to fall, so grab yourself something to set it up on so that way it doesn't want to constantly fall down. Probably should have set that up before, but doing it now. And then take the screw out, which doesn't seem to be wanting to come out of this piece, but it is out of this one. The screw has come out, but it pulled through the hole that it goes through in here, in this side of the shock tower. So I'm going to put a washer on it, and that should hold it in the shock tower more than over here, because it goes in this side, hit a jump, it pulled the head through, and then was jamming right here because the head didn't go back through into this one, it was on the outside. So I undid it to get the threads out, and then needed to get it to turn and get out of the hole because the head was not going back through this hole. So I'm going to put a washer on it and then get it back in. Also going to, I'm gonna use the same size screw, same length, just with a washer on there. Put it in and put it all back together, and should be good to go. Pulled it together good. Get it pretty tight. Take that out. Get your shock spacers. Put it in. Get your shock up. Make sure the ball is facing the right direction. Accidentally pushed it in too far. Push it back out a bit if you need to. I like to use a guide or something to hold that, so when it goes in, it stays in that spot. Get it to walk in easy, like that. You might have to have something to pick that up and get it in. Push your pin in all the way, and then simply just put your screw in and you're all set. Alright everybody, that was a quick video of how to replace the gears on your X Maxx. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you like the video, go share it and comment what you want to see next. Thank you all for watching.